Tell us about yourself, Dahlia.
Yeah.
I'm from Broome, Western Australia, up the top of up north there, and I come from a large family, local family. I have 4 children. I teach Yaroo language, the language of my people that come from that area, in Broome at a local school. Also participate in a strong team of people trying to revive our language, and I'm also a co-artistic director and performing artist with Maragaku Dance Theatre Company, and we travel around the world and the country and to remote places with our dance theatre work.
We're big fans and big supporters of Australian languages and minority languages. How long have you been teaching Yawuru?
I've been involved in the Yaroo language program at Cable Beach Primary School for 14 years. I was lucky enough to learn from an elder called Doris Edgar, one of our last remaining fluent speakers. She passed away 4 years ago. And I was part of a team, so there was the model that we had, a bit like a master apprentice program where I learnt from the elder as much language as I could, and then at the same time learning from a mentor, qualified language teacher who was teaching me how to teach and facilitate those lessons within a school setting. Being a dancer, that was all sort of new stuff to me. So it was like, okay, absorb as much as I can from the elder, cruise around looking at different trees, do your research, listen and soak in as much as she would give. Obviously, you can't just go up to the elder and say, okay, teach me the language. Off you go, start doing your job.
Go.
There's that trust, building trust and transparency, and make sure that, she could see that I was coming from a genuine position in helping our language. And I'm Yaroo, so Yaroo Badi woman from up that way, so I have connection to a place further up north on the Dampier Peninsula called One Arm Point, or Ariolan. But also born and raised in Broome, so connected with my Yaroo family a lot too. So when approached, you're a young Yaroo person, would you like this opportunity to learn your language? Of course, there's no other answer but of course.
Yeah.
And then that responsibility of, doing a good job of trying to learn as fast as you can. I grew up with some language, but unfortunately, due to past policies, that was interrupted or disrupted.
Can I ask you there? I kind of wanted to bring that up. A lot of the people who might listen to us online, or even some of the people in the room, I find it constantly surprising, because we talk about minority languages a lot on the program, and we talk about all of the efforts to try and revitalise them. But I'm always astounded at the level of not knowledge, if that makes sense, that people have around why so much language has been lost. Did you want to discuss a little bit of how that situation has actually developed?
Yeah, well, I mean, speaking from the place where I've born and bred, the past policies, so we were exempt from the White Australia policy in Broome because of the pearling industry, so we had other minority groups that are now minority in this country, Asian, Malay, Filipino, Indonesian, Chinese, Japanese people come to be divers within our town and within the industry, which intermarried with the Aboriginal people. So we, hence the look, we're all a bit mixed breed mob up that way. But growing up where you're connected to your Indigenous culture, the place, the land where you put your feet on the reef and the floor ground, that's where you're grounded. Listening to the old people speak about, we wasn't allowed to speak language, if they taught, like my great grandmother was a fluent speaker of Yaroo, she chose not to speak Yaroo to her children, including my grandmother, for fear of being taken. You're going to be taken away to be taught the whitefellow way, so that you can assimilate well into the new way of living. You can imagine how damaging that was. Oh, yeah. Just in that. Then taking them literally from the place that the language is connected to a whole, you had river people shifted to seaside places like Biggle Bay up the peninsula, up in Broome, so that a lot of people that grew up that were shifted during the stolen generation and times like that were shifted to places like Biggle Bay onto missions where they were taught, how to iron and how to keep a house clean and, all the domestic duties so that they could be dispersed into the, white pearling masters' houses and whatever. Forbidden to speak language. Don't talk that mumbo jumbo.
And when you say forbidden, like you're talking about like corrective measures were in place. Like if you used language, they would beat you.
Yeah. And the repercussions of that, like my dad's generation, he often, when we speak, sometimes, with my family, I might speak Aboriginal English, which we might touch on later, but which is a more comfortable way to speak because that's how you relate to your family. And even my dad, from those sort of discipline actions, is like, don't bloody speak properly, right. You better speak English properly, because the fear of...
trauma lasts.
And that knee-jerk, the reaction of that's what was done to them. Speak properly, don't speak that mumbo-jumbo,
And just quickly, on the idea of moving peoples from where they were to wherever the white people wanted them to be, you mentioned when you went to learn Yaroo from your elder before she passed on, that you had to go out, you had to go walk and look at the land. So it's I get the idea that there's like an indelible link between the place where that language came from and that world. So if you take them out of that world, you don't have that river world where you can go, this is our word for this is our word for this is our word for this, because now you're on reef or now you're in the desert.
Yeah. And that elder that I learnt from, she was lucky she didn't... was lucky enough to... she grew up on a station. She grew up in the bush, really. She didn't have a birth date. Like, to explain to the students that I teach, this elder sitting near me doesn't know her birthday. We can't sing happy birthday to her on the day that she was born because she was born under a tree in the bush. Her school, she didn't go to school. She can't read and write, but she's one of the smartest people that you'll ever meet, the most knowledgeable person you'll ever meet, because she knows the seasons, she knows how this country works, she knows where to find water if where you can't physically see it. She knows what animals to eat in the right time of the year. She could survive if she was stuck in the middle of the bush, She got the proper way of learning.
So what's it like teaching this language to a new generation? It must be absolutely fascinating.
It was great to have a foot into that perspective from the elder, like literally driving around town, hopping out, walking into the bush and saying, this tree, we used to use them for bush medicine, and then she'd tell you the story, and a lot of the things awaken knowledge that you already knew. Like my father would teach me the similar things when I grew up, but it was like, reassuring, so that was a Yaroo word. I knew that from way back when I was little, because you don't get taught this is a Yaroo word and this is a Bardi word and you just learn what it is. And then to start analysing, this is this language, that's that language, that's why we use... So driving around with that perspective and seeing through her eyes, like we'd look often out across the bay and she'd say, before there'd be a huge sand dune there, but they knocked it over and they put that big tank there and there's this there and, so... Like, I've always known the tank and the this and the that, but she's known a whole different picture. And to see country like that and then be able to try and share that perspective with the young people, the next generation, so that they are aware that there was this other life. There is this other knowledge that lives in our elders that we need to know about.
I very much get the impressions tied in with the environment. You're learning a lot about environmentalism at the same time.
Yes, and it's really important at this time where we are now. Climate change and things like, the knowledge systems that have been embedded for generations are very important at this time. To speak to our elders, they've been tracking things for a long time. They've known them 7,500-year-old tide marks where you see fossils of shells and that on Roebuck Plains where, now cattle roam and eat grass. They knew those things from learning about them through that oral, passing on of knowledge.
How are the revitalization efforts going? Are the kids picking it up?
Yeah, it's got it in one sense. You teach in a school setting. You have an hour a week with the senior students, so you have half an hour a week with the juniors or the pre-primaries and the little ones.
It's not much though, is it?
No, and
I'm a teacher. An hour a week is like usually the stuff where you kind of go, oh wait, where was I again?
Yes.
What are we doing?
Or you have to practice. Half of the lesson is like that repetitious stuff to make sure that they're going to. You can move on that little bit. It's like bit by bit by bit. But I'm lucky enough to work in a school that values our Yaroo language and culture, so we embed it in the school system so that you hear announcements. The student counsellors, for instance, greet everyone in the morning, and they say who's on duty. All the blocks in our school are named after the 6 Yaroo seasons. Their factions are named after animals within the Yaroo language. So the need to use language is already in there.
Yeah, it's part of the school culture.
Yeah, it's part of the school culture, but it hasn't always been like that. It's been a long road to earn that respect from the naysayers. At the beginning, the program was a bit more like, put all the humbug kids in that class,
right.
and they can go learn language, And so now it's much more. We've fought long and hard to get that respect and go, hang on, this will benefit everyone, non-Indigenous, Indigenous kids, everyone that lives in Broome. If you know about that local culture from those perspectives, and you can use that language, you awaken that spirit of country, and you'll be taken care of in country too, like our way,
Was there ever like a aha moment in terms of trying to garner that respect from people? Because obviously you're straight out of the gate, you're sitting there going, you guys don't understand. This is such the key that could unlock so much stuff. At what point did that understanding on your part begin to genuinely transfer over to people who had the power to make some of those changes?
I think seeing the leaders in the school, so the admin, lead from the top, when they start going, hang on, there's potential for this, or for them to come to ask me, maybe we should rename the blocks from Pearling Luggers, which was great, but they didn't actually really do anything with that information, from El Dorado and Nautilus to Bargana and Wilburu and Wirralburu, and and then you had the teachers that were like, how are we supposed to get our tongue around that, And I'm like,
you learn it like everybody else. Yeah.
What do you mean? Are you trying to say teachers are curmudgeonly old farts? That doesn't sound like my profession at all.
They can say it perfectly now, but they just, at the beginning, it was just like,
But that's going to take me at least half an hour of like trying to figure it out. And I've got The Bachelor to watch, so.
Yeah.
Well,